My name is Robin Fleming, and I'm an early medieval British historian. I'm interested in the period between the fall of Rome and the early Middle Ages. It's a period without very much textual evidence. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of it we don't know anything about through texts. So instead of looking at texts, which is what historians do and are trained for, I look at material evidence, that is, the evidence that's been found by archaeologists. I'm really interested in using whatever evidence is available to tell the story of people who lived in the past and past lives. And one of the major pieces of evidence we have is skeletal material for the early Middle Ages. We have tens of thousands of skeletons that have been excavated. And if you look carefully at skeletons, you can find lesions that tell you what the basic health of the population is, what their diseases were. The idea that you could actually look at skeletons and think about things forensically and then use it to talk about the distant past, I think really excites students. The texts that we have from the early Middle Ages are written primarily by men. They're written almost entirely by monks, and they deal with very high-status individuals, in particular kings. And so that's a tiny fraction of the population. Well, I think that things are overlooked oftentimes by historians, and I think a lot of times what historians don't realize is that people make things, but things make people as well. And so the stuff we have in our lives in some way determines how we live our lives. And so looking at those things to get kind of echoes of the way people live their lives, I think is a very useful thing to do, and I think it's pretty productive. One of the things I got interested in is the way that high-status women showed their social status and showed how important their family was. And so they had these beautiful, long, metallic objects hanging from their belts, and they were made by smiths. They can be very beautiful. But what I noticed from the cemetery excavation is that women of a lower social status also had things hanging from their belts, but they couldn't afford to have the same things that these high-status women had. So they would go through trash dumps of old Roman settlements and find Roman spoons, and they'd knock off the bowl of the spoon and they'd hang them on their belts to have a kind of knockoff of what wealthy women wore. I'm writing a book on the transition from Roman Britain to the early Middle Ages. There's a huge gaping hole between the Roman period and the early medieval period. So there's this line between the two periods. I want to move that line, and instead of having the period that I'm interested in divided by that line, I want to put right where that line is the center of my focus. And I want to see what the world looks like if we don't think of it as the beginning or the end. And I'm also interested in moving lines between disciplines. I think a long time ago we decided what history was and what archaeology was. And now what I want to do is have us rethink that, both archaeologists and historians, to figure out how we can work together and actually write history and write about the past differently. One dreams of getting to MacArthur, but nobody, I think, ever thinks that they actually will. And so when the phone rang and they said, "Can we have a confidential conversation?" I almost fell on the floor. This is going to give me the opportunity to bring people in. I'm really interested in collaborating with people outside the discipline of history. I know who I want to do this with. I can do it now. It's going to be fantastic.